Morning, everyone. How are you today? How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome to. I love this, Emil. Welcome to Analog Dialogue, November. I hope you are enjoying your Sunday. We'll spend about an hour. Grab your favorite cup of drinks. I have my tea as usual. You don't have your drink
I don't
today.
have anything.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, well, grab a drink and join us for Analog Dialogue.
Yeah. So I'm Emil.
I'm Wakako.
Today, pretty much, we decided, since the holidays are kind of around, and we not specifically talking about the holidays, but we were talking about, how our routines change, and like especially like our journaling routines and how those are different when we are traveling, when our everyday life is disrupted, and like how we process. Like you were saying, big feelings, which I like the word for because it's like not just negative feelings or stress, but also like positive feelings and how your
It's just all the feelings seems to go like really high and then really low.
yeah, exactly. So today we are going to be talking about our journals and how we journal, but today we're not really focusing on the journals themselves. So like, last a couple of times I think we were talking about like Nolte and like, kind of really showing the different planners, and you can kind of look at the old videos for that and go into detail. But today we are more going to be talking about what we are doing in the journals, like kind of like methods or like, our rituals going into it. So yeah, I think that's what we'll be
Sounds
talking
good.
about.
More of how, not what.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, and then today behind the camera we have Kay. Kay is in the chat, and then we will have a comments we will have a Q&A at the end. So if you would like to leave a question in the comments, Kay is going to be kind of looking in there, and then if we have time, we're going to try to go through some of the questions that may be in the chat. Yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave it there. We're not going to address them right away, but we will kind of be taking a look at them. And then Kay will also be in the chat if there's any like quick questions that maybe she can answer. Yeah,
Sounds good.
Going into it, the first section is going to be how we adjust our routines during travel or
holiday season.
Yes, exactly. So really like when our routines change, when because like it's not always like just travel, right? Like if we have family visiting, that's still going to affect like our day-to-day routine, like what kind of
or lots of outings. I mean, getting Christmas tree, nutcracker show, concerts. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this month and next is a little nutty for, at least for me. It's always like that. October, November, December. It just seems to kind of like grow quite a bit, like expand.
Yeah. I always say like it's Halloween and then like the next day is Christmas. Like it feels like it goes really, really fast.
It does. And it's a joyful time. I love the idea of celebrating the season and spending time with families and friends. Those are all really good things.
Yeah. But it can definitely be stressful. And it's hard when we feel like we are supposed to be spending time with the people around us, like making sure that we are still taking care of ourselves. So yeah, do you want to share a little bit about like, because are you going to be traveling at all this holiday?
Yeah, not until December. Towards the end of December. Well, we travel a little bit in the middle of December. But big one's coming up towards the end of December into January.
Okay.
Yeah, but November, I think this month, we've already done quite a bit of travel this fall. So I feel like this right now is kind of hunkering down at home and BK. But still, it is just a lot of shuttling of the kids and ourselves into the city, around the city.
Right.
Like I mentioned, I just feel like there's just more events to attend right now. Which is like, I don't want to necessarily miss it, but it does take quite a bit of time away from our routines.
Yeah, and energy too, because you have to kind of like figure out how you're going to manage the rest of your time and still make sure that you like, are addressing all of the things that you need to do in order to keep life moving. So so what kind of things do, like if you are traveling or you don't have the space for, all of your journals, because I don't know why, but I get this feeling you have a lot of journals that you're using this year. But
So much.
if you were traveling, like, which ones do you think you are like, these are the ones I'm going to bring, even if I don't have a lot of space?
Yeah.
Like, which ones are you prioritizing?
That's a good question. I think in some ways I do have a lot, but they're not always like constant. They don't always have to come with me, right? So, I mean, if I'm traveling, like visiting the relatives in the city, like just overnight by car, then I might take a little bit more than flying with just a backpack. Right. So if I'm just flying, if I'm flying and with not checking the luggage, I think I still stick with just carrying my traveler's notebook. And it is, I mean, I went back and forth when I started traveling just with traveler's notebook, like, where am I going to journal, or like when I want to document something or write stories, like what's going to happen and where that's going to happen. And I think in some way I'm so grateful for Frido's design of the JIYU weekly. I mean, JIYU monthly always comes with me because it's my master calendar, right? So it's in some way I'm holding this, flipping this. It just has to come with me. Otherwise I just don't know where I'm supposed to be. Right. But the weekly is more free flow, and I, sometimes write the thought of the day, but I also just use the weekly pages as an open ended page, not restricted to the weekly, so more like a bullet journaling. Okay. Should we switch to the overhead? Or no. I just want to know, like, is there anything else that you bring with you, just to kind of like, before we go into the overhead? No, that's a good idea. No, I think if I'm flying, I just take these two. Okay. And then you were saying if you're driving, if I'm driving, maybe I'll take my 5-year journal. You're super chunky. Super chunky. It's almost the end of the 5 years. That's why. Well, I have one more year. It's really fun to see. Like, mine doesn't look anything like that right now. So it was like I didn't recognize it when you. Did you start at the same time? No, I didn't start. A year later. But I feel like even if we started at the same time, it would still look really different. We're all different. We're very different. Yeah, and then for myself, like, because you're traveling quite a bit this season. Yeah. Now that COVID restrictions are kind of like lifting a little bit, I feel like a little bit more safe to travel. So I've been doing, like, I've done a little bit of traveling so far. I'll be doing a little bit more for the holidays. And then when I'm traveling, I guess I tend to bring a little bit more than you. So, like, I always bring my traveler's notebook, because this is also my wallet. That's your wallet. And so I have this with me. Right. And I'll go into detail after. I usually do bring my Hobonichi weeks, but this is kind of like, this is optional. I don't always bring it. I think it depends on, like, what is going on when I'm traveling. And then I do bring my. Oh, you do bring your journal. I do. Okay. I do bring my journal, my Codex. And then I've mentioned before, this is more for, like, personal, reflective journaling, while this is very much like practical. So I usually try to bring this, and I don't always use this, but I found that I really like to have it. Just having it, right? Just knowing that you have a place. It's my safety blanket. No, but, like, I do, like, sometimes, That's a good metaphor. Yeah, like, and I do use it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But because this is like a reflective one, I don't really know if I'm going to need it later. So I'd rather just have it with me, so that if I do. What do you mean if you don't know if you need it later? Because if I have, like, really intense emotions, or feel like I need to, like, reflect on something, or like really process something in depth, that's when I'm really going to want to use this. And I've just kind of learned over time that it's kind of like a better safe than sorry thing. Like, I don't always need to do like a deep dive reflecting while I'm traveling, but sometimes I do when I get, like, really, really stressed, or when I want to remember something. So so these three, with this one being the optional, this is the Hobonichi week. This is like logistics stuff, right? Like, it's the operation. Yeah. And then I'll kind of. Well, do you want to talk about yours first, or should we? No, I want to see what you. Okay. Yeah. Then let's go ahead and move into the overhead camera. So let me adjust and bring it down a little bit. There we go. So these are kind of like the main ones that I
always bring. And then this one's kind of like the optional one. And then actually with this one, it was really nice. So I was traveling to San Francisco this past week, and I had a mix of like plans.
Did you also take this too?
I did. I did take this.
So you had all three in San Francisco?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I did take all three. But I think what I ended up using the most was probably this one. Like this one, I just had tucked in my TN, as you saw. And this was kind of like...
It's the dashboard?
This is the BK dashboard, yeah. And this is the new one, because we've had the dashboard before. But this is the new version that we recently came out with. And I kind of wrote in like all of our plans. So this is kind of like, you know, our travel times. I have here like our hotel information, as well as, you know, what time check-in is, their phone number in case I needed, the address. And then like, you know, also the confirmation code and such. So pretty much like the things that I don't want to be like fumbling around in my phone for.
It's like the itinerary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like I also kind of have, because some things like this is all like filled in now, but I think when I left, like there were a lot more empty spaces that
when you left LA.
Yeah. When I left LA, I had a lot more empty spaces in here. And then as I was talking, or like, you know, talking to people who lived there and getting recommendations, or, you know, I was kind of like, oh, I kind of want to visit this store again. I feel like I didn't really have time. Then I kind of continue to fill in on the different days. And then like, you know, this is like a Monday through Sunday, like with the weekends being on top of each other. And my trip started on Friday, so that's where it starts, and then it just kind of like ended on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this is actually the breaker, and that's kind of why it's blank there. But yeah, this was super useful to me, and I was like constantly referring to this.
And it's nice that it fits on the very front of your travel. It's not back.
Yeah, and I really like that, because I do have this like information written elsewhere, but this way I don't have to go digging
That's
for
a good
it.
idea.
Yeah, so this is kind of like what I like to travel with. And then same with this. Like,
do you have like a notebook in there too, just like to jot down notes and stuff?
This is actually, so I have the BK Travel for Life wallet,
It's for your wallet. Yeah.
So this is where I like keep a lot of like my cards. I have my vaccination card tucked in here and some cash.
Right.
And then this is actually my to-go sketchbook. So I just kind of have, just if I have some time, sometimes I'll kind of like go in and do some sketching or take some notes. Like I'm very like loose about this. Like this page is falling out.
Awesome.
But pretty much I just like having it with me. And this is another thing where it's like I don't use it all the time, but I really like having it on me, so that if I want to draw, or if I have some time, or if I want to remember something, I can. And then my wallet part.
Oh yeah, you have your wallet sewn in.
Yes.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
It's so well loved.
Yeah, it's very
it's
shiny,
olive, right?
Yeah, this is the TN olive, and I have the wabi sabi here, and it's very shiny, and like I get questions a lot because a lot of people think it's brown, and it does kind of look brown. Like if I put it next, if I put it next to yours though, because yours is brown, like you can see the difference. Like mine is olive,
for sure.
But on its own, it looks brown.
It almost looks brown.
It kind of has. It actually reminds me of like wet tea leaves after they've been steeped in stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's a great analogy too.
Yeah. So how about you? What do you bring with you when you are
when I'm traveling? Let's see. So here's my my TN, I guess it's constant in some way. It's for every day and it's for travel. It just says, oh, and then I have my dashboard too. I'm trying it out. And I put a little tag because mine just gets lost in between pages and I can't find it.
Yeah. We were actually like talking about what we're going to talk about to prepare for this talk. And like she kept losing the dashboard.
Even within the 20 minutes.
Yeah. Within us talking, you left or you lost it like multiple times.
Right. In the travel as well.
Yeah. Has that helped? So
yeah. I mean, it's cute. So I have a little tab here. So it does help because if it's in there, it's just enough to like be able to find it again.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it's just my personality. I think just such an organic flow person. So I don't have a very strict like this must stay here. So then it gets lost.
Right.
So but my monthly, like I said, is my master planner. So I have kind of where it needs to be, I need to be, what kids need to be, kind of thing. So that always stays with me. And like I was mentioning, like weeklies, I actually this is my second weekly. So I finished the first JIYU weekly that was meant for a whole year, like in about 7 months. Because I use it as like a bullet journal.
Right.
Where I'm not restricted to a week per page.
Right.
So I go through them.
Right.
Which is kind of fun.
Yeah, because you were showing me like, this page, you can't see it because of like, the nature of the JIYU is so that you can, use or ignore the lines that are there. But like, this isn't like a blank page that you can see like the JIYU lines under here, but you've just kind of like decided
I
to
just write over it. And sometimes this is the only notebook I have with me. Like I'm waiting for Sachi's soccer practice and then I'm just in the car.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I just want to kind of create a draft for my love letter. Then I'll just be the page.
Right.
So it'll be the next page I open and I'll just go through it. And sometimes it becomes my packing list for camping, right? But then in between, I do use it for weekly things. Like this is for this week. And then I kind of figured out that if I put a tape on the page that I actually use for the week, I find it again a little easier.
So that you're not losing the actual weekly planner.
Yeah, that might be my thing. Like the hecticness of how I enjoy living my life requires little tabs and markers.
Yeah,
to ground me.
I mean, but the way that you use it, like it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
With knowing you, like it makes sense that you are kind of like
everywhere.
Just kind of using it as you need and kind of like letting it fill whatever purpose you need rather than like trying to fit yourself into a predetermined planner.
That sounds so nice. I love that. I know. So probably tonight I will write down next week's dates and I'll probably use this page as my next week, Thanksgiving week spread. And who knows what's going to be in. But then if I'm, like I know on Thursday, I'll be driving to Orange County to be at my parents' house. Then if I need to journal, I'll just turn the page and I'll just journal here.
Okay.
And then the following week might happen, who knows which
or
page.
It might not.
Or it might not.
The rest might all just be notes.
Yeah. So that's been really interesting because it frees me up from needing to carry like all these notebooks that I have at home. Right. So it does help me feel a little bit more flexible. So I enjoy just having this. And then this is probably what I will travel with to Japan and Denver, which is a holiday travel. But if I'm traveling by car or if I have space in the luggage, maybe sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. This is a fun one to bring because it's a 5-year journal from Hobonichi.
Right. And
I do enjoy having like just bits and pieces of information from each year. I have lots of photos imprinted, so it's a lot going on.
Right.
It's like Sachi's birthday, and it's just nice to have. And I'm so glad I was going to get A5 size when I was thinking about 5-year journal.
Right.
And I think one of you convinced that I should stick with A6.
I don't remember.
Might be UNS.
Yeah, it might be
might have been UNS. But it's small enough, and the cover is so durable. I feel like it will withstand some of the heavy duty travel.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And it makes sense because it's supposed to be something that, for one thing, you're supposed to have for 5 years, but also you hopefully would keep it and continue to have it
right
after.
Yeah. So I enjoy having this one. And it's been, maybe I'll try to take it to Japan this year.
It's nice to be able to write down the memories when they're fresh instead of trying to remember everything when you go back. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with either of those, but you might remember things that you might not.
It's true.
Remember.
And then the ink color, like you remember things by ink color. I think AC mentioned that in their stories. And even just, I don't know. So and I know some people like it super neat, but I kind of like it just loose and in the moment.
Right.
Not too curated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's true that there's something about tangible memories being just written down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so I think that is going to be it in terms of showing you exactly like what we are going to be bringing. So we can just switch back over to the front-facing camera. But Yeah, I think that so, but it's not just like, what we're bringing that changes when we're traveling or when our routines change. Like, and I was asking you this before, but, how do you find time to journal when you are traveling? Because I think I have a hard time with that, where it's like I don't have my designated space or like my schedule's a little different. So I get a little thrown off. But where do you find that works for you?
I think consistently is before the bed. Right?
Okay.
Like, yeah, I mean, we enjoy having analog time after dinner. Just like, we're done with dinner, and if we're just hanging out at the table, I'll be like, I'm gonna have my journal time, and I'll bring my notebook and some. Frieda often has his traveler's notebook. Kids on and off. Sometimes they bring their not traveler's notebook, but their journals. So we get to have a journaling analog time, but that's more of a kind of communal experience. It's not a deep dive, really processing like the day and thinking about what happened. It's more of like just kind of scrapbooking, which is just as enjoyable too.
Right.
I enjoy that, but like just when it comes to like reflecting and sort of downloading from the day personally, I feel like I try to find a little like moment before the bed, like literally in bed, like I'm ready to go to sleep and I just need my notebook, and I don't have stickers, I just usually just at that point pen and notebook.
Okay.
Just keep it really simple.
And then does that change when you're traveling? Because I know that that's kind of like your routine similar when you're at home. But like, do you have a harder time sticking to that? Or do you have to find like other times in between?
Right. I find it, I know you mentioned it's harder to journal when you travel, but I find it easier to journal like in between time. Like my mind is a little more open, and I find things that are inspiring a little quicker because I'm out of the routine. Routine is hard sometimes. Driving in LA is difficult.
Right.
But like if you're on a train and we were transiting from Berlin to Hamburg, and that 2 hours pocket on the train just seems like such a refreshing moment, and then I would have my traveler's notebook with me to journal. So I tried to find time in between.
Yeah. And that makes sense to me, especially like when you were just showing us your traveler's notebook, how you were like letting the pages kind of fit for what you need. Like you're kind of doing the same thing with your time, right? Like as you are going, like you're like, oh, I have this time that I can spend doing this, so I'm going to, write in my journal a little bit. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and I think maybe just the idea is not to force fit the routine from home, because that's going to be impossible.
Right.
But just be more. I try to stay, I guess, I tell my kids all the time, be flexible, girls. It's okay. So I tell that to myself. It's okay. So I just let it kind of naturally evolve.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And it's sometimes fun because I pick up new, just like a ballpoint pen, or even like stationery store in different cities have fun supplies. I might pick up a few.
Something to try.
Yeah, something to try, and that brings up like a fun, analog time. Yeah, but I feel like sitting in just at the end of the night and just writing and sort of write until you really feel sleepy feels like a good solid grounding routine. How about you?
I think I do, to some extent, do the same thing where it's like if I am going to journal, it's usually going to be like at the end of the day, because that's when I'm likely to find time. Because like I don't fall asleep easily anyway, especially in new places. So that's usually what I'll try to do, just to kind of like get myself like more relaxed. But in terms of time, like I don't always journal when I'm traveling. I think it just kind of like depends. Sometimes like, especially if things are like really busy and we're doing like this and this and this and this, like I just don't have the time, or like even when I have like spaces in between, like you were asking me like, oh, but what do you do like before the plane? And I was like, oh, I was like looking up like, different areas, or I was looking up like, where are we gonna have lunch? What bus are we gonna take? Like
you were researching.
Yeah. And that's kind of like where my brain goes in between. So it was interesting hearing you talk about, how you fill those spaces in a different way than I do.
Do you find yourself feeling like if you're traveling, and you skip a few days of just putting thoughts on the paper, do you find yourself feeling different? Like, do you like crave writing on your notebook, or do you feel the need to go back, or did you just go through it?
That's a good question. I think I do feel the need to go through it, and that's probably also like kind of like an experience thing. Like I just know that no matter how impactful like a trip might be, like I will forget if I don't like kind of like record even just like a little bit of what I did. And then I think that's kind of what I was using my Hobonichi weeks for this time, was like, even if I didn't feel like I was too tired to journal, or I didn't feel like I had a lot of time, I would try to at least write like, you know, one sentence. This is what we did.
Right, what you
this
did.
is what like where we ate. Like, just so that when I go back and I am, you know, because I have my 5 year as well. When I'm filling that in, I can just kind of like reference my Hobonichi weeks, and then like I can usually like if I just read that sentence, I'm like, oh yeah, and then this happened and this happened. Yeah. But without having, you know, that like little sentence, everything gets kind of mixed up.
Yeah. Have you ever felt, this is something I kind of started noticing when I was doing 5 year journal, and then looking back, just one sentence I wrote at some point, right? Like randomly. Do you have this experience of like the whole experience kind of like projected in front of you when you read that sentence? Even though you might have not written that, you're like, what are you talking about? So like you say, okay, you went to this restaurant in San Francisco and you wrote it down. And that sometimes to me, that's enough for me to actually recall that experience pretty vividly afterward. Even though I might not write it down more, you know, in detail.
I think my memory is a little bit more selective. It's kind of weird because sometimes just that sentence will be enough, and I will have that experience where I'm like, I remember like, you know, exactly what happened, exactly what people said. Like I remember all like the little details, but then there are other times where I'm like, I don't even remember that I did this. Like, you know, it's good that I wrote this down because I wouldn't remember otherwise. Yeah. So I think it depends.
Both,
for me.
Depends.
But
that's
either way,
me too.
Either way, I like to have even like a little bit written down, because even if it's not, you know, especially interesting or consequential, just knowing that like this is a day that I spent doing something, you know, sometimes that makes me feel at ease.
It's like a thread, right? Like it's just sort of having the threads through your life.
Yeah, exactly. So
what are you taking? I know you're traveling for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think I'll probably take the same things, because this last trip that I was on to San Francisco was a week long, and then this time I'm going to be taking a week trip to Florida to visit my mom. And I think because the length of time is about the same, I'll probably be taking the same things, especially because right now we're, you know, in that time we're transitioning into new planners. So I'm kind of like, so I'm kind of like working in my planner even more than usual, just to kind of get used or get ready for that transition.
I see, like testing it out.
Testing it out, or like really making sure that I have all the information that I need, because like I try to, as early as possible, start to transfer that over.
Oh, I see.
Which I can't do unless it's properly in the first journal in the first place.
I thank you for inspiring me to be more organized.
We're very different.
I love it. It's nice. After I talked to you last time, I went home and made a list.
Oh yeah.
Kind of.
So that actually goes into, you know, our next topic, which is like, you know, how we are processing when we are feeling like overwhelmed, or when we have like a lot of like big feelings that we want to work through, like how we, you know, how we manage like ourselves so that we feel
interact with it. Interact with the feeling
to feel more grounded in the moment. And you know, you were just mentioning like making lists, which is one of the things that I do. Like I make a lot of lists pretty much like all the time. And even if I am, you know, usually they're like checklists, but even if I don't go back and check them off, even if I don't do that. Like somehow just like making the list itself like makes me feel a little bit more like I have a better sense of what I need to do. Otherwise, it's just kind of like floating in the mass, and I feel more overwhelmed. It's kind of like being able to pin it down.
Right. It concretizes like your thoughts and ideas, right? In a tangible way. Yeah. And you see it visually and you're kind of really interacting with the information.
I can actually go into the overhead camera, and then we can kind of talk.
That was really helpful for me to hear.
Yeah. So let's go into this. So this is my Hobonichi weeks, and then this is kind of like the list that I'm talking about. So like, you know, I've talked before, I have like all these swatches in the front pages, but then almost like all of the rest is kind of like lists. And so this is actually like 2021 Christmas list. And
wow, you actually carry over from previous year?
I think I did, because this year I had, I don't remember why, like I usually,
it's a great reference.
Yeah, I usually have like all the names here, and I'll like you know, just this part, like having like all the names, I'll usually have this down, I don't know, like October, September or something like this.
Thank you. We need more Emil and me.
Well, I don't know, it only helps me so much. So but yeah, it, especially when I have people who I want to send gifts to, or I want to you know, like people who I have a hard time finding gifts for, like I have those people at least written here. So I can kind of like look down the list and also remember that those are things I need to plan ahead for. And then this is like last year. I do have this year's, which I've covered with cat tape, because there are people who are watching this that I'm getting gifts for.
We want it to be surprised.
I want it to be a surprise. But yeah, this is kind of like something that I transfer over. And then actually, like, you know, this list of names, I transfer it over from the year before. And then you can also kind of see, like, I have kind of like, you know, grouped together the names. And these are usually like either the people like who are living together, or people who I feel like I'm going to be seeing the same time at like a party.
Information is grouped, organized.
So it's kind of like my roommates or my family. So I have them kind of like grouped together, which I think also just helps me to organize. And then I have like little red dots by the people whose gifts I'm probably going to have to mail, because that'll take more time.
Right.
And then even here I have like a planner check-in, and this is kind of when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my next planner. So I had written down like just a list of like what I need, what I'm using it for, what is working, and then also like how I can apply the needs that I wrote down to like a future planner. So I kind of like just wrote these ones down, and this kind of like helped me to I guess concretize the
ideas.
The ideas, and like what kind of things I need the planner for.
Right. Just kind of making sure that you're getting it for a certain purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's interesting because it's such a great idea. I went home, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to make a list. No, but not because I need to make a list, but I feel like the holiday this month and next month, because there's so many moving parts, and because there are a lot of celebration requires some planning.
Yes.
And I do think instead of having it feeling like letting us feel overwhelmed, having a list and organizing thoughts just kind of helps too.
And I think for myself, usually I get so stressed about this kind of thing, about like the things I need to do, about like making sure that I have things for people.
Because you care.
I do care. And I get really, really anxious. And if I'm not careful, I get so anxious I can't really enjoy myself. So this is kind of like what I do to try to prevent that from happening. And it's not perfect, but it does help me. And then, you know, once I'm done with the holiday list for this year, I will probably just carry it over into my next planner, because I do have another Hobonichi weeks. So I think I'm just going to carry over the names, and then it'll be ready when I need it next year.
And then the thing is, the thing that throws us off like that is pretty consistent each year, right? Like things that are like, we all have a certain things that kind of gets us a little nervous or a little anxious or over the top feelings, and I feel like if we have a moment to reflect that it's usually pretty consistent. So like for you, those lists are consistently going to be super helpful because you've kind of found out that's what your trigger is in some way.
Definitely. And then I was kind of doing something similar for the San Francisco trip. So like, actually, I think I was like anxious about this trip maybe a week or so before, you know, and it's like too early for me to like pack or anything. But I feel like I want to prepare somehow. So I kind of like made a packing list like way ahead of time, which was really good because then when it came time to actually pack, I just had to look at this list and it was really fast.
Yeah, you're not relying on your memory and your processing bandwidth of that moment.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I have the like, you know, my list here, and then this is kind of like how I usually have my weeks planned out, but like, you know, this column I will usually reserve for like to-do list, grocery list, that kind of thing. And then this time I happen to use it for a packing list. So yeah, I really like lists, and they really help to ground me.
And you keep all these journals too, right? Afterward.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
As a reference.
Yeah, because sometimes I forget, or like if I'm kind of like making a packing list and I'm like, I really feel like I'm forgetting something, I have an old list that I can refer to. Yeah, so this is very much like, you know, the practical side of my brain, like how I'm going to manage that information.
And it's small enough that you take it everywhere.
Yeah, and I can. Yeah. So yeah, it's small enough that I don't usually have to worry about space. So I usually do bring it when I am going somewhere.
Yeah. And I like that it's hardcover, so it's just throw it in your bag and you have it.
Yeah, and I usually keep it. So this is my Euroliku pouch, and I usually just keep it here.
Right.
And then I'll have like the pens that I want to travel with on this side. So all I need to do is really like put this pouch in my bag, and then I'm really set to go.
Yeah.
Which is also nice if I'm like, you know, going to work, or if I want to journal. Well, I haven't been doing this as much lately, but if I'm going to journal in like a cafe, or if I'm going to the library or something like that, I have it with me.
Maybe 2023.
Maybe 2023. We'll see. And then, you know, if I'm doing the more processing of emotions rather than like the practical, you know, what do I need to do? Because I mean, those things can be related too, because like sometimes it's the things you need to do that are overwhelming you. But I feel like this is more about when I am feeling overwhelmed with emotions, whether good or bad.
Right.
And then how I manage that. Like I have a couple of things that I tend to do. The first one being kind of like just kind of a journal entry. And, you know, I have it kind of like this, and I have them all dated. And like, you know, I chose this page because sometimes it is just like this big, and then other times like I have more to say, and sometimes it takes up multiple pages. And then I was kind of looking through, and I was kind of thinking about like, okay, where do I start with this? Because I know that's something people struggle with is like, you know, what do I write in my journal? Like, how do I start?
Where do you start?
Writing?
Yeah, so true.
And I think like I noticed like some of the things that I consistently saw myself starting with was like, I feel like, or I'm thinking about, and just kind of like starting with that, and then kind of going deeper into like the way that, you know, feeling is materializing in my body, or how I feel like it is coming out in my day-to-day life. Or yeah, like especially it's nice to have something like this, because there are, you know, we're human, we're very much imperfect, and there are lots of like, you know, no matter how good of a person you are, no matter how kind you want to be, you're gonna have like really ugly thoughts and feelings, and like, you know, things like you know, jealousy, or like frustration, or like, you know, disappointment, or like, you know, anger that might seem kind of like childish to yourself. It's nice to have it in here, because I think just having it somewhere where it doesn't have to burden somebody else, but I can still like process it is like really important to me. Yeah, so I think that
I love that idea of starting. If we're noticing, we're sitting at the dinner table with family, could it be joyful or disappointment? It could really go either way.
Right.
But then you step away from the dining table and to be able to say, okay, I'm just going to start honestly about how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And just sort of let it flow.
Yeah. And usually like I don't have a good idea of exactly like where those feelings are coming from or how those are affecting me when I start writing. And it's kind of like something that I'm figuring out as I'm writing, like maybe it's coming from this, or maybe this would help me. And usually, even though like, you know, it's not like those problems are solved by me writing, I feel a little bit more optimistic about it at the end, or I don't feel like those emotions are kind of like bursting from me afterwards. So this is kind of like, I think this is probably like the main thing that I usually do. The other thing that I do is kind of like stream of consciousness. And then I wanted to put this in here because this is actually like, you know, there's, I think like 30 pages here, like 3.5. But this is actually different from stream of consciousness as a habit, because I've done that before where I did like 3 pages every day at a certain time of day. And I know that that is a very, very popular and very effective method of journaling, just having that space to let your thoughts flow. But this is very much a reactive stream of consciousness. So I'm not doing this as a habit. I'm doing this as a way to process feelings that are going like really fast and are really overwhelming. So it's kind of like, it's not even like at this point me trying to understand emotions. It's more like those emotions are coming so fast,
flowing out of the pen.
That just, you know, writing them down as fast as I can, and like not really worrying about the content of what I'm writing is pretty much the purpose of this. So it's definitely different, because I think right now I don't really have stream of consciousness as like a consistent habit, but I do come back to it in like a reactive
You just know
way.
when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like just another tool that I have that I know works for me. And usually, like, you know, whether or not I'll do this way or like an entry is just going to be depending on what I feel like doing in that moment. Like,
and your writing is different.
Yeah, really, really different. So like, you know, the stream of consciousness here is like really fast. Like, I can't read this. I don't know what it says, which is kind of the point.
It's not for you to actually go back and read it again and process again and again. It's more just about letting it.
And just kind of writing it down as fast as I can, so that I can really be trying to keep up with the thoughts in my head as they are coming. And then this one is going to be, you know, a little bit slower, because I'm really like trying to process and take my time with understanding myself. So it looks really different when I'm comparing them. But I think that's usually what I use this journal for in general. And it's kind of why I like to keep it with me. So like I said, I don't always use this, but the way that it serves me is so it's pretty much just like as I need it. So I don't know if I'm going to need it when I travel. And I know that I do tend to get like more stressed around this time of the year. So it's that much more important for me to.
I think having the awareness of the fact that I could bring a lot of feelings around this season is helpful in itself, isn't it?
Definitely. And in case anyone is going to ask, like, this is the MD Codex notebook, and I just have it in the TSL original cover black. I think right now we have the nude and the brown one in stock. But anyway, moving on, like, I want to know what kind of methods and exercises you use, and how you are processing, like, you know, your big feelings or your stress, or like what you are working through and how you're doing it.
I think I don't have a specific method. Like, you have a pretty tangible way of doing it.
It only sounds only sounds tangible because I'm talking about it like this. Like, you know, it's in the moment, it's a lot more reactive and fluid, and you know, there are times when I'm not following these like guidances. Like, it's just as it comes.
Well, so I also have MD Codex 2 that I started using about 2 years ago. And it lost its cover, so it's got a little.
Isn't that funny? It's like about the same age, and it doesn't look the same at all. Like, you've definitely gone through yours much faster.
I'm hoping and thinking maybe this would be, I would wrap it up end of this year.
You can do it. Definitely.
I think so. This is the way I'm writing. I go back to this kind of in a similar way. It's interesting how certain notebooks gets us gravitated to for certain purpose.
Right.
I feel like that's maybe the thickness and the page counts on my BD Codex with the design layout. I feel like this sort of this very openness,
Mhm.
and I love the feeling that pages don't judge you.
Yeah.
Right? It's an open invitation for us to process.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just feel like it's a really empowering tools to just have.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's part of the reason I feel like the whole idea of analog and journaling is a powerful things to have in our life. And, you know, that's why BK is BK.
Right.
But I feel like, so this is really my personal pages. So I'm not actually going to go through really in the depths.
Yeah, you don't have to.
But I do use, and this is what I have next to my bedside.
Mhm.
And yeah, more, and I've been also not in a strict, I must follow this every day kind of a routine,
Right.
kind of like you, where you are. But if I feel like I need to sit and have a winding down time, it's nice to have a companion.
Mm.
So I would go to this. And one thing I did start doing, I think maybe when I started using this, is because it is so open-ended what I write, and I go through quickly too. Sometimes I will highlight things I might have to remember.
Right.
But what I started enjoying doing is just creating an index page for the months.
Mhm.
So this is generally, so I wrote a bunch of things in December, and so when I got to the last 2021 generally, I just left a couple of pages open,
Mm.
and then I filled up the following pages with journal entries. And then every day or every time I write, it's not necessarily every day, I'll just pick up like key idea that I saw or what I want to remember from that journaling session, just so I have some place to ground myself. Otherwise, it's hard for me to keep, like, it's just so overwhelming to have all these pages. And we don't have to look back or read back, but having this page of index just really helps me. Markers, you know, I'm a marker kind of person.
It is helpful, especially when you have something like this where it's kind of like you want to have a space for anything, but there are going to be times when it's important to remember.
Index page, right? And then sometimes I would just go back to this index page. I'm like, I wonder what I meant when I wrote down Grocery Dialogue, and I actually could go to the page of the dates and actually maybe try to read through some of the entries or kind of look back and think what I was thinking.
Yeah. I'm curious, how often do you say you go back and read through your journal?
I don't know. That's a controversial question.
Is it?
Yes, because a couple months ago I said I'm going to toss all my journals out, and then I said, okay, I'm actually going to go back, try to read my old entries. So yes and no. So I for a long time I've never went back to read my entries. I just put them away, and they were in the storage for a while because we were moving. You know, so it kind of got shuffled out around like previous notebooks. Right. So, but if it's actually, maybe that's part of the reason I think I do enjoy Codex, is that it has enough, like it has 2 years of the writings. So I could a little bit more casually go back to my old thoughts.
So when you say it's controversial, it's only controversial inside your head.
Yes, it's me.
I see.
And you know, I have two thoughts. Should I keep my old journals or should I let go my old journals?
I see.
So it's a very controversial question.
I see. I'm sorry if I hit a nerve.
No, it's fine.
But so like what you're saying with like, you know, these index pages is like, that's how you're like marking all of these, right? So that would be like the start of.
Yeah,
that's interesting because I do have tabs as well.
Well, it comes with the tab.
Yeah, but I don't use those ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I don't really number, because I don't have like an index page like this. I don't really pay attention to the dates very much, but I do have tabs for subject. So
a certain subject.
Yes. So
like if it repeats.
Yeah. So exactly. So there was I think a time when I first started this journal when I was taking a lot of notes during therapy.
Okay.
And I wanted to be able to revisit those notes because there's a lot of like, you know, me reflecting and like kind of trying to figure out ways that are really healthy for me to move on with my emotions. And those are going to be tabbed by a specific color. So like in
that's a great idea.
Yeah. In that way, like I have them more color coded
Mhm.
and not like the same color, but just kind of like in the same family.
Similar family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I know if I'm looking for something,
That's
that's
beautiful.
kind of what I can do.
Yeah.
Um,
It's visually also satisfying.
yeah, and I like that.
Yeah.
These are the Swatelia.
Swatelia.
Yeah, these are the Swatelia.
Yep. Yeah, the tab sticky stickers. Yeah.
And then these are the ones that come with the Codex.
Yeah, it comes with a Codex or some other MD notebook that I might have kind of recycled from previous years. But yeah, no, I don't travel with them, and like it will stay at home usually when I travel. So I have a conflict of like, oh, how do I keep everything together? But that's life.
That's life. Yes.
It's messy.
It's messy.
Like a bunch of thoughts in my TN and then a bunch of thoughts in my Codex, and I just try to figure out, navigate.
Yeah.
But I do find it really, really, really helpful to write down, even ask myself a question like, why am I feeling that way? Not even trying to, like you said, resolve it, but just asking myself like, I'm feeling this way. I wonder where it's coming from.
Yeah. It's important to, if not anything else, acknowledge those feelings. So because you were saying you travel with just your TN, like, could I assume that if you don't have this with you, you're pretty much doing the same thing in your traveler's notebook?
Yeah, that's on my JIYU.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just, yes, it is.
That's really smart.
Yes, it is. Yeah. At home though, I do have like, whenever we do have a good analog set. Can I just bring these up?
You can bring.
So yes, Emil said, you have so many notebooks at home, and I do, because I think it's, I have a different, there's a personally processing the feeling, and then there's a personally remembering the, wanting to remember and also like cherish some of those feelings. Right. So I do have like other notebooks. I wouldn't travel with them because it would just become my whole suitcase.
Yes, that would be.
That I don't even have. Would be notebooks. But I have the MD 1 day 1 page diary for like scrapbooking kind of purpose, which is just as also lovely. I feel like, as a process of feelings or moments or days. And I do this in a way that I feel, it's still personal, but I think of my kids when I do these notebooks. And same for the letters for Sachi and Coco. It's just, I do it in a way that's meant for the kids. And if it's up to them to hold on to them later or not. But I feel like, these different, yes, I can be super simple and just be with the traveler's notebook. But also at home, if I'm having a lot of big days and then big feelings, I go through every single notebook sometimes in a day. Yeah, and you told me like that you were saying like, I go through every notebook, and by the time like I go through them, I am so tired that I fall asleep really easily. And I'm like, well, yes, that would happen if you're going through. I go through 4 and 5 notebooks. Yeah. Sometimes, and we don't have TV, right? So we don't watch TVs at home. So in some way, this is my analog entertainment. I see. Yes. So yes, I do go through, and it's nice. It's processing. It's all these different parts of my life that are being processed for that night. And it's a good. It's unfortunate that they can't be smaller, so they can't come with me when I travel. Yes. Yeah. Yes. You also write very big, and I feel like you write a lot. True. So I feel like even if you tried to downsize to a smaller notebook, I feel like it would be really hard. It would be really hard. Yeah. And probably the way that you expressed yourself on those pages would be different. If they were smaller? Yeah, if the notebook was smaller. That's true. But thank you for sharing this. Yeah. I know that this is personal for you, so I really appreciate that. Yeah. So I think we have a little bit more time, so I think I'd like to go into the Q&A. So I think we're done with the downward-facing camera. And then, Kay, if you have any questions for us, she's going to pick those out for us. Thank you. There you go. But yeah, just how different we are is really interesting all the time whenever we talk about this. And I feel like all is okay. Yeah, right? There's no right or wrong way of doing things. And I think, yours sound like it came out through the trial and error. and just trying different things, and you found what fits you today.
Yeah. And I think being on this journal to find the perfect planner, the perfect notebook, the perfect method, I feel like that is leading yourself into a world of pain, because there's like
It's a myth.
Yeah, there's no such thing. So yeah, give up. No, but like, just keep trying with whatever is feeling good at the time.
And it can change.
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely.
Like what you do today might not be as relevant in a year from now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mary says, do you both journal prior to these live videos to clear yourselves from an overload of thoughts and emotions and to have clarity in your conversation?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a good question.
Did you journal this morning?
Not this morning. I'm not a morning person. But we had a conversation the other day, just so that we could kind of like talk about the things that we might want to bring up, or to have a good idea of like what kind of questions might be interesting. And then I went back and kind of wrote down just like a really rough outline of what I want to talk about. I actually have it like right here, so that if I like forget things, because I forget things all the time, then I can just kind of reference it really quickly. I have like moments where my brain just like turns off and then I don't know where I am anymore. So that's kind of what this is here for. So you guys don't have to stay with me while I'm trying to reboot my brain. But yeah, how about you? Do you journal?
Have I journaled before the dialogue?
Yeah.
Let me think about it. Answer is no, not this morning, but I made a big cup of tea and I know I have Emil that will ground me. But having the previous conversation was really helpful.
Yeah, I think so too.
And it cleared up sort of my thoughts and thinking and what I wanted to share. Yeah.
And then while we were having that discussion, we were also both taking notes about like what was interesting. So no, in terms of like, are we journaling, but are we taking notes? Are we kind of like preparing? Like, yes, we want to make sure that we're kind of like on the same page beforehand, even though this is kind of like the kind of conversation
more
we have
casual.
Anyway. But yeah, so I hope that answers your question. So let's see, do we have another one? You want to read this one?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Petra. Emil and Wakako, thank you for sharing. Do you ever use prompts or associative tools? Oh yeah, for example, cards, in order to help you journal through some thoughts, emotions, or processes? Do you have an?
I want to say no. That I think it just doesn't really. I don't really feel when I like look at those kinds of cards, because I do know what you're talking about, and I think that there are times where there are people I follow or other artists I look up to that they will kind of post a question or something like that. Now I'll respond to that, but I feel like it's not quite the same as like having like that kind of tool for prompts. I think for me it's just not. It doesn't really inspire me to start writing, and I think that that's a personal preference. I think it inspires a lot of people and is really like important to other people's process. But for me, it doesn't really serve the purpose that I need for journaling. How about you?
I'm similar to you in this one. Yeah, I also do know that there are a lot of people who do get a lot of benefit from having the prompts. I think for me, the minimalistic aspect of just being able to go with journaling is really important to me. So having to have a prompt, so having to have tools would kind of slow me down a little bit. It might be the 5 minutes I just don't have to go through and look for the right prompts to start journaling, because sometimes I don't know, my time is very squeezed.
Right.
So for the simplicity, like even for pen, I only just carry one pen because I just can't handle multiplicity of tools.
It's so funny hearing you say that, because I would never put you and minimalist in the same sentence.
You mean, what do you mean? I'm so minimalist.
But I understand what you mean. Like, you are very straightforward with the kind of
super straightforward. Yeah.
And you've told me before, like, I can't use these kinds of tools because it takes up too much time and it's too finicky. Like that makes sense to me. So yeah, like I guess it's just not something that works for us. But who knows? Like maybe it's the kind of thing where in the future that will change,
Right.
and I'll want to
Right.
have more prompts to
Yeah.
reflect on.
But maybe in the comment, if anybody who's watching have a really great source for prompts or tools, like maybe share the links, because I would love to check it out afterward, and I can read the comments afterward. So, or maybe also the other audience might enjoy.
Yeah, and it'll be helpful in case, like, you know, anyone in the comments is like, well, thanks, Emil and Wakako, that helps me. Not at all. You know, if you have something that would maybe be helpful to someone else, like that would be really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, Petra, for asking. And then we have one more question.
Hi, AC.
Hi, AC. How long does it take you to leave thoughts in every notebook at the end of the day, Wakako? Like an hour or more? Or does it vary? Do you ever get tired and skip parts? LOL. Thanks for sharing. Yeah,
how do you mean AC with all these journals? I have to keep bringing it up.
Yeah, how long does it
I know.
How long does it take?
It depends. It depends on how tired I am at the end of the night and how much time I have. But the day that I could go through all of them, it's just lovely. That means I had a ton of time for my self-care.
Like just because I really want to know, like if you had to put like a rough average number, or like, you know, maybe this much time to this much time, how much time?
Well, so the letters for Sachi and Coco that I do, it takes about like maybe 10 minutes total.
Okay.
It's pretty quick.
Yeah, you write very fast.
I write very fast, and my writing is really big. And then sometimes for my MD diary, I could spend like 15 minutes maybe just for the day. I don't know. I feel like my attention span is rather short. And then my reflective journal, I don't know. I fall asleep sometimes with pen in my hand. Literally. It happened. That has ever happened to you?
I think that's happened to me before.
Yeah.
But I wonder, that's really interesting because, you know, you're saying I have a very short attention span. Mm-hmm. I can only spend like 15 minutes before I don't want to write anymore. But I wonder if that's why you have like so many notebooks and why that's helpful, because it does give you like a longer amount of time that you are reflecting without feeling like, wow, I've been really working on this entry for 2 hours. Like, so it's kind of like breaking it up into pieces.
Mm-hmm. 2 pieces. Yeah, it does help. It kind of compartmentalizes my processing a little bit, right? Like there's time that I get to be really grateful for my girls when I write letters to them. Right. And that part is like taken care of. And then when I, you know, journal on diary, MD diary, it's like a family life and just looking at the BK, like just like all these things that I feel really grateful for. Mm-hmm. So like that's like really a good like chunk. And then when I'm processing other things on my Codex, it's a whole, like I'm like taking care of each parts of the brain in a segmented way. And yes, it helps that each of them is about 15 minutes.
Well, I think going into like any kind of like setting up a journaling habit, when you create like a habit for yourself, or when you're trying to establish a habit for yourself, you're really kind of looking at what you want to prioritize in terms of like reflecting, because there are so many like parts of every person and every person's like thoughts and experiences that are worth reflecting. But like, you know, saying like this journal I'm going to use for my girls is kind of like you are putting a priority on that specific reflection.
That part of the process, yes.
And I think that, you know, knowing if you're kind of trying to think about like what kind of habit you want to build in 2023, like sitting down with yourself and maybe making a list of the kinds of things that are, you know, your priority and how you want to reflect, I think might be like a good way to start. And then kind of like looking at that and saying like what would fit in terms of like how I want to process this information.
Yeah. I was also going to say, and it's true that I do have a lot of notebooks, but because they're the same sizes and same color, I'm still minimalist. And then that it fits nicely. So yeah, don't be fooled by the quantity of notebooks we all have.
Okay.
And yes.
Okay. So I think that's going to be it for today. We are open today from 12 to 5. Today is actually also our Journey program drop-off day. So if you are unfamiliar with the Journey program, pretty much it's kind of like a way to bring in old artifacts that you might have gotten from us so that it can have like a new life with a new person. You can find more details about that on our website, and it's going to describe it a little bit better than if I were to try to rush it here. But yeah, if you have time, please stop by, like whether you want to go for the Journey program, or if you like need to pick something up, or if you just want to spend time with us, we'd love to see you. And yeah, I think that's it for today.
And
right?
and if you're traveling for Thanksgiving week, have a great, I'm looking at you because I know you're traveling. Yeah, have a great week ahead, and we are open next Sunday again after Thanksgiving. So Emil won't be here, but Kay and I will be here opening. So yeah, I just hope that, I know it's just a big week coming ahead, and I just hope everybody have a safe and fabulous week ahead.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today on your Sunday morning. I know that there are probably other things that you could be doing, but it means a lot that we can kind of like sit here and have this conversation and include y'all in it. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed your time with us, and until next time, I hope you enjoy writing. Right.
Thank you. Bye.